let's get to this Matt Gelb article here, or this Matt Gelb report, I should say, that was followed up by an article on The Athletic. And Matt reports this. The Phillies have fielded steady interest in all three of their left-handed relievers since the offseason began, Major League sources said, and it could nudge them towards a trade. The free agent market for lefty relievers is not robust. Some of the best available arms include Gregory Soto, Drew Pomeranz, and Hobie Milner. It's why teams have targeted the Phillies. They have José Alvarado signed for $9 million in 2026, Matt Strahm for $7.5 million, and Tanner Banks projected to make about $1 million in his first year of salary arbitration. This doesn't necessarily mean that the Phillies are going to trade one of their three lefties. It is a luxury to have three lefties in your bullpen. And I think it's a luxury to have three lefties that, to me, fill three very different roles. I think Matt Strahm is very excellent. We're going to talk about what they do well and their numbers in just a little bit. I think Matt Strahm is very excellent in clean inning work in the 7th and 8th innings. I think he challenges hitters. He pitches with moxie. I think there's times where sometimes his command got away from him last year, and we'll talk more about that. But I think Matt Strahm has been an incredible piece to this Phillies bullpen over the last couple of seasons. Tanner Banks did an unbelievable job of elevating his role and stepping up into high leverage situations when we really didn't expect him to. And I think he did a nice job as well. And then José Alvarado, if he can come back and be 85 or 90% of the guy that you saw at the beginning of last season, the velocity's back. I think that I think that the value in Alvarado being a high leverage back end of the bullpen lefty, pairing him with Duran, I think that, the Phillies have a luxury right now with three lefties who fill three very different roles. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're definitely going to trade one, but if you have the upper hand in the trade market, of course you're going to field calls. You're going to see maybe I can get a higher leverage prospect in return that, maybe I wouldn't have at the trade deadline or last offseason. So, A, I don't know if that necessarily means they are going to facilitate a trade. And B, the other thing too, I do believe it's interesting given that two of them, Alvarado and Strahm, are on the final years of their deals. So let's talk about all three guys and then rank what I believe and what you think is the likelihood that maybe these three guys get traded. Let's start with José Alvarado. Obviously, the middle of the season was marred with that 80-game suspension for PED use, or the PED policy, I should say. He was dominant prior to the suspension. The stuff wasn't the same. He ended up getting injured post that. He didn't really pitch much in his return. But I think even with the suspension and a certain level of unknown heading into 26, I do think that the Phillies would like to keep their power arm in the bullpen, especially from the lefty side. You've got Duran as the power arm from the righty side. Alvarado is your lefty power arm that can come in and get you a big strikeout when you need it. So I think even with that, paired with the fact that the club pretty quickly picked up his $9 million club option, I envision him being the lefty setup man for Jhoan Duran in 2026. So without getting into the other two, I think José Alvarado is the least likely to get traded, because I think they want that power arm. And I know that they're going to have to deal with a potential contract extension or letting him walk at the deadline or in the offseason in 2027. I know that is on the horizon, but I think picking up the club option indicates to me that they want José Alvarado on the roster. So that brings me to Matt Strahm and Tanner Banks. So let's start with Strahm. Strahm had another successful year. It maybe wasn't as dominant as 2024 was because his ERA was unbelievable in 24, but he still did post a 2.8 ERA this season. Now, his whip rose almost 0.3 points, which was due in large part to the fact that last year he walked 11 guys, this year he walked 20 guys, and he also gave up 11 more hits. I don't think Strahm's command was as sharp this year as it was in 2024, but I do still think he is a super valuable member of this bullpen who has been for basically the last 3 seasons. He's set to make $7.5 million on the final year of his contract before he becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2027. Now, we talked about Christopher Sanchez's value, which was significantly higher than his actual contract. Matt Strahm's was the same. In the last 2 seasons, he's made $15 million. Fangraphs values him at $28.7 million, which means Fangraphs' evaluation of him based on his WAR and his metrics is that he's almost double as good as what his contract indicates. Now, you're not going to pay a reliever $15 million a season, but at least not a middle reliever. You might pay a high-end closer that, but you're not going to pay a middle reliever $15 million a season. But I do think that tells you that the value of Matt Strahm is really significantly higher than what maybe a middle reliever could be. Then we get to Tanner Banks. Banks, to me, is coming off the best season of his career. He was entrusted with a much higher leverage role because of that Alvarado suspension. And I mean, I talked about him, Andrew, what did I talk about him? 10, 12 times this season. You know how much I love Tanner Banks, especially this year. He stepped up in a big way and got the Phillies out of a lot of jams. He saw 32 inherited runners this year. He had career highs in WHIP, walks per 9, strikeouts per 9, ERA plus. He had a second-best career ERA, second-best hits per 9. I love Tanner Banks. The question is, do you think that Tanner Banks can continue to pitch at that level, especially considering he has a really team-friendly contract as he enters that first year of arbitration? He's expected to get somewhere between $1 and $1.25 million. He doesn't become an unrestricted free agent until his age 38 season. He doesn't become an unrestricted free agent until 2028. He still has 3 more years of arbitration. So, do you continue to keep him because of that contract, because of high productivity, or do you sell high knowing that it's quite a few years of team control, knowing that he's coming off the best year of his career? Do you sell high in maybe a little bit of a concern of does he bounce, does he kind of revert back to his career numbers, which are heading in the right direction over the last 2.5 seasons, but still are like, they're decent. But last year was by far, to me, his best season of his career. Of these 3 guys, I think the least likely to get traded is Alvarado.
The least?
Yes. And
because
the reason
of all that stuff?
Even with that stuff included, yeah, and I know that he's on the final year of his deal. Even with that being said, I think that I don't think they would have been as swift to pick up a $9.5 million club option if they didn't value him in the bullpen next season. Now, that doesn't say that other teams don't value him, because I think everybody wants a hard-throwing lefty, a guy with wipeout stuff. You know, I know the control stuff at times, like he gets a little erratic, he gets a little wild, but when José Alvarado is on, he's one of the more dominating relievers in baseball.
Yeah.
And has stretches of like 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time where he's nearly unhittable. Then he'll go a week or 2 with, you know, heart palpitation type of performances.
Sure.
But I think the stuff is unquestionable. And again, I don't know exactly how he returns. You know, he's pretty injured pretty quickly after he returned to play. I don't know how he returns, but if he's a semblance of the guy we saw in the first 2 months of the season, that's an extremely valuable piece in your bullpen, especially if you can use him against the lefties in the 8th inning. Let's say you see lefties in the 8th and then Duran in the 9th. You're just getting flame on flame. I think that he, to me, would be the least likely to get moved. I think it comes down to Banks because teams would value the contract versus Strahm, who I think has now had a proven track record over the last 3 years of being a legitimate high-leverage lefty out of the bullpen. Pitches the 6th, pitches the 7th, can pitch the 8th, could give you a 9th inning if you wanted to give your closer a day off or 2. I think if it's between those 2, I would say Matt Strahm is the most likely to get moved because of the contract.
Sure.
I think that Banks, while I spoke extremely highly of Banks this offseason or this whole season, there could be a regression.
Yeah.
You know, I think that soft tossers, especially and bullpen guys in general, are year-to-year type of arms. I think there could be a regression. I hope there's not. And I think especially for a guy who's on arbitration for the next 4 years, that's valuable to a team that's going to probably spend the same amount of money, if not maybe a little bit more than they did last year. That's valuable to have a trusted reliever at $1.5 million. Even though I think Strahm has been as consistent as they possibly come for this bullpen over the last 3 years, I think if you said to me, pick one of those 3 guys that might be on the trade block, I think it's Matt Strahm.